This is Mac OS Ken.
A raised target on Apple shares, arguments against a big acquisition, and an amazing Apple Store burglary. It is Friday, the 7th of April, 2023. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Go to hellofresh.com/MOK50 and use code MOK50 for 50% off. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSKen. Neutral with a bullet? That might be one way to describe BofA global research analyst Wamsi Mohan's stance on Apple shares. Barron's highlighted a note from the analyst this week, wherein he upped his price target on Apple but kept his neutral rating on the shares because things are fine. Quoting his note, "Our checks suggest iPhones and services are stable to better, with revenue additionally aided by incremental foreign exchange currency tailwinds. Although Macs and iPads have trended worse, the highest profit margin parts of the portfolio will likely keep gross margins stable. As for the future, it seems evenly split in Mr. Mohan's estimation. While he expects Apple's services segment to improve this quarter, he thinks iPhone sales could improve, and he's conscious of the anticipated mixed reality headset on the horizon. Benefits could be muted thanks to weaker spending by consumers." In other words, he's kind of neutral on it. So why up the price target? Because his old price target was underwater. It had been $158. He used this week's note to up that target to $168. Apple closed Thursday at $164.66. I tend to think of gigantic acquisitions by Apple as a sort of fever dream shared by every financial analyst out there. Turns out, though, they are not all dreaming the same dream. A piece from Bloomberg by way of Yahoo Finance has a few folks from the financial front really dissing the idea. It is common for analysts to look at Apple's giant pile of cash and want to see Apple spend it on something big. Past targets presented as possibilities include Netflix, Tesla, Peloton, and most recently, media giant Walt Disney. They all have one thing in common, says Bloomberg. Anyone betting that Apple would buy them has so far been sorely disappointed. The piece has Jensen Investment Management's Kevin Walkish saying, "You're probably missing the value of the business if you think the key catalyst for investment is a major acquisition. It's a low probability bet." Investment Partners Asset Management CEO Greg Abella is quoted as saying, "Not doing a big deal hasn't impacted them, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm pleased that Apple has a lot of discipline in this regard." And Edward Jones analyst Logan Perk says, "If Apple tried to do some massive deal that was outside of its wheelhouse, not complementary, really changing its story, that would make me worried. It would be so outside its normal course of action that you would have to ask why." Worth noting, Apple is into so much at this point that outside of its wheelhouse is getting smaller. Also worth noting, Apple has said repeatedly that it would buy something big if buying something big made sense. The company may do a huge deal at some point, but the wishes of some on Wall Street will not make it so. It's an old quote. Everybody talks about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. Believe that people in Cupertino are trying to do something about it, but it's still not working. Or maybe it is. Depends when you check. 9to5Mac says the underpinnings of the weather apps for iOS, iPadOS, and macOS went crash-tastic Thursday. That marks the third time this week, according to Apple's system status page. As it had earlier in the week, Apple's message on the service said this service may be slow or unavailable. Like I said, though, it seems to depend on when you check. The way 9to5Mac describes it, when the weather service is down, the Apple Weather app and widgets will show loading states or report an error message like no weather data. The outages are seemingly intermittent. It's up for a few minutes, and then it's down again. Like the sun peeking out from behind the clouds before the clouds drift back in front of it. Telling you, I'm starting to like this whole skin idea. It's hard to know whose bottom line this will affect, but there was a notable move for iPhone sales in the States on Thursday. The piece from Mac Rumors says the electronics chain Best Buy has started selling unlocked iPhones, the most recent models not included. Buyers have been able to get iPhones through Best Buy for years. They've always come with carrier locks, though. As of this week, the retail chain has brand new, unlocked models of iPhone 13, iPhone 13 mini, iPhone 12, and the third generation iPhone SE available, both in-store and on the company's site. Best Buy does sell units in the iPhone 14 line as well, though those are carrier-locked. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. When was the last time you tasted something truly new? I have a lot lately, thanks to HelloFresh. Don't get me wrong, it was all ingredients that I recognize, though put together in unexpected ways. HelloFresh keeps your taste buds on their toes with 40 recipes and over 100 seasonal and convenience items to choose from every week. With so much variety, there are options for everyone and every lifestyle. And if you're no pro in the kitchen, no worries. Ingredients arrive pre-portioned with clear instructions and even pictures to reference along the way. Taste how good it can be. Go to hellofresh.com/MOK50 and use code MOK50 for 50% off, plus your first box ships free. That's hellofresh.com/MOK50 and code MOK50 for 50% off and free shipping on your first box. Don't miss this great offer on America's #1 meal kit. Get free shipping on your first box and 50% off with code MOK50 at hellofresh.com/MOK50. If your iPhone's crash detection feature accidentally calls emergency services, please stay on the line. That is the request from Apple. While nothing is great in a crash detection is a great feature. Accelerometers and microphones and other tech work in concert to alert first responders when a crash is detected. The problem is the tech can't always tell the difference between an actual crash and, say, a fall on a ski slope, a ride on a snowmobile, or even a particularly jostling roller coaster. We've heard this request to stay on the line from emergency services personnel in the past. The problem is when they get an emergency call, they have to assume that there is an emergency. A caller whose phone has accidentally called for help may be embarrassed, may worry they're going to get in trouble. They may simply not think anything of it. If that accidental caller can tell emergency services that there is no emergency, emergency services can stand down. Otherwise, they have to act on an emergency call for an incident that they don't realize never actually happened. Now, a piece from Mac Rumors says Apple has made a couple of changes to its support dock tied to crash detection calls. Please stay on the line, and please don't cancel the call. Actually, that second one isn't there, but it might be implied. According to Mac Rumors, Apple removed a line in the support document that suggested users cancel a call during the timer period. If you don't need to contact emergency services, tap cancel and confirm that you don't need emergency services, read the sentence that has now been pulled from the document. As for the one that has been added, the doc says if the call has been made but you don't need emergency services, don't hang up. Wait until a responder answers, then explain that you don't need help. A show with a bit of an unhinged premise is hitting Apple TV Plus soon. The Cupertino streamer issued a press release this week announcing a premiere date for the Patricia Arquette dark comedy series High Desert. According to the release, High Desert follows Peggy, played by Arquette, an on-again, off-again addict who decides to make a new start after the death of her beloved mother, with whom she lived in the small desert town of Yucca Valley, California, and makes a life-changing decision to become a private investigator. If you've seen Poker Face, you get that. And if you haven't seen Poker Face, you should watch it. It's really good. Stars adorn High Desert. Listed among them are Matt Dillon, Christine Taylor, Brad Garrett, Bernadette Peters, and others. Arquette is an executive producer on the project, as is Ben Stiller. Clocking in at half an hour each, the first 3 episodes hit Apple TV Plus on Wednesday, the 17th of May. And finally today, here's one for Arquette to solve. Who cut a hole in the wall of a bathroom to rob an Apple store? Apple Insider says somebody did, getting away with $500,000 in stuff. According to the report, in an organized operation, burglars recently cut through a wall of an adjoining shop to steal $500,000 worth of stuff from the Alderwood Mall Apple store in Linwood, Washington. There's an espresso machine store adjacent to the Apple store. Bad guys apparently pried open that store's locked door, then cut through its bathroom wall. That gave them access to the Apple store and the 436 iPhones with which they made off, as well as an unknown number of iPads and Apple Watches. I have a pitch for Apple TV Plus. CSI Apple Store. Okay, maybe Law and Order CPU. Have my people set up a meeting. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Go to hellofresh.com/MOK50 and use code MOK50 for 50% off. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSCan. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media. Online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. info@macoscan.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.